by the time this video comes out, it will be LGBTQ plus month here in the United States, otherwise colloquially known as Pride Month. So I figured this would be a perfect opportunity for me to not only talk about my sexuality, but also my gender identity and what that entailed for me, both in terms of my experiences and what it means for me. So, spoilers, I'm a bisexual. Who knew? And in case if you're wondering which fictional character it was, so what being bisexual means for me is that I like everyone. I like males, I like females, I like people in between, and I like people who have no gender. Ultimately, if you're attractive to me in some kind of capacity, I automatically like you. And the only reason I know I am not straight is because every time I see a cute girl, one way or another, I immediately get nervous. And I know some people are probably gonna say in the comments, oh well, Pomeranian prince, since you're attracted to just about everyone, doesn't that technically speaking make you pansexual? And I can see where some people are coming through with that. At one point, I actually did identify as pansexual, however, ultimately the label just didn't really stick well with me and I just stuck with the bisexual label instead. This is one of the main reasons why I do not like to engage in bi versus pan discourse, because aside from the fact that it's very counterproductive and there are much more important issues within the LGBTQ plus community to care about, like the fact that there's so many pieces of legislation that is actively being passed to prevent our trans sisters from being able to live. I'm sorry, but I'm just not in favor of getting involved in these kinds of discussions where nothing really gets resolved. Another reason why I don't like getting involved in bi versus pan discourse is because by and large, everyone's sexuality is going to be different from one another. Yeah, somebody may be bisexual and they may have attraction to the opposite sex, but if they purely date someone of the opposite sex or pursue people of the opposite sex while also having, sexual and romantic feelings for someone who is of the same sex, I guess the best way I can say it, and I think I've heard this on Tumblr one way or another, but basically someone used the analogy of colors. How fitting that I'm talking about colors considering that this is an art analysis related channel. Anyways, the analogy goes that basically when you mix red and blue together, you end up with a new color, and that color is purple. That color is not considered 50% blue or 50% red. It's basically considered a new color, and that's kind of the same thing with bisexuality and pansexuality. I don't know how I'm going to squeeze this topic out, but this is more of a incoherent rambling about biphobia, specifically the kind of biphobia that I have experienced, where my bisexual identity has been questioned and even invalidated purely on the basis that I have a preference for men, and how apparently that doesn't make me bisexual because of it. Which to me I find to be absolutely ludicrous. I always thought that the point of being LGBTQ plus was basically feeling some form of attraction to somebody of the opposite sex or of all genders, or just basic attractions or gender identities. And even if I am dating someone who is a man, or even if I do have a preference for men, ultimately that doesn't invalidate my experience or even my sexuality as a whole. I know myself completely, and I know that not only am I attracted to men and do I prefer them, but also I like women. I like non-binary people. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, if you look conveniently attractive to me, I'm going to fall in love with you. And don't be surprised if I fall in love with you the moment you give me bare minimum kindness. That's kind of what happens when you're traumatized. Now that I'm done talking about my sexuality, I think this is a perfect segue into the gender part. My foray into my gender identity isn't like your stereotypical kind of story. I never knew from the word go that my gender was different or that, I felt like my body didn't belong to me. Although, the one thing that did have me thinking about gender identity, there was a Cartoon Network show called Whatever Happened to Robot Jones, and the premise of the episode is that Robot Jones has an identity crisis surrounding his gender identity, and basically, I can't remember because it's been such a long time since I seen the episode, but basically the boys and the girls try to pressure Robot Jones into being the respected gender of either, and I think by the end of it, he basically says, I'm neither a boy or a girl, I'm just gonna I'm gonna enjoy both masculine things and feminine things, which I know the creators intended it to basically mean, it's okay for kids to like both masculine and feminine things, but the message that kind of stuck with me was me saying, oh, Robot Jones can have no gender? What if there are people that can exist that have no gender? What if gender never existed? And this was back in 2001, and already I was on that 3000 AD thinking. So eventually in 2013, I was experiencing a lot of hardships during that time. Without getting too personal, I didn't have the best living situation growing up, and I still don't have the best living situation. I was dealing with a lot of mental problems, primarily depression and anxiety, and what I would later eventually come to realize was severe borderline personality disorder and bipolar. What happened was that I was starting to question myself quite a bit, especially in terms of gender. But basically, I was dealing with a lot of turmoil from those factors, and eventually I thought I was experiencing dysphoria, so eventually I thought to myself, oh, well, I don't really feel comfortable living as a girl, and I have never felt comfortable living as a girl, so I think I might be transgender. And I believed in that for the longest time up until 2018. My parents found out about it. My mom specifically found out about it. She basically found out by deciding it would be a good idea to go inside my iPad, already violating my privacy, and basically going through my Tumblr account and seeing a lot of the things that were posted. And she did not handle the situation at all. She basically lashed out at me. She basically said that, you shouldn't be identifying as transgender, blah, blah, blah. You are a byproduct of the devil, blah, blah, blah. If you want to mutilate your body, go ahead, do it. I'll send you to the nuns. I grew up a Catholic, by the way, so that was another thing my mom used to threaten, was send me to nuns. And also, she used to threaten to exorcise me because apparently I was infected with demons. I know a lot of you guys are probably laughing, thinking that this stuff may be funny, but honestly, it's really not funny. It's not funny to tell your teenage child who is dealing with severe mental illness and possible dysphoria that they're going to hell or that they are demons for even considering thinking about their identity. It's super fucked up. And it affected me. Like, there's nothing I can say aside from it affected me. And it got so bad to the point where I actually did consider trying to take my own life. I considered committing suicide because of it. And when you're someone who is in that much turmoil and was dealing with so much unstable support from your family group and everything else, I'm sorry, I need a moment. I seriously need a moment. Thankfully, my mom has long since mellowed out and has come to realize that a lot of the views that she held on to were wrong, but it still doesn't diminish the pain that I went through with that. I just want to apologize because I had to take a moment and breathe and get myself some water because holy shit, I think that was some unprocessed trauma that I just... Anyways, I stopped identifying as trans around 2018, 2019-ish when I realized that, I wasn't really as dysphoric as I thought I was, and I'm actually non-binary. And you know what? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes a label that you thought you were comfortable with, but then it turns out you're not really that, but instead something else, that happens. And I don't want anyone to, feel like as though their sexuality or their gender identity is invalidated because of that. That's kind of the thing about sexuality and your gender identity. Since it's entirely on a spectrum, obviously everyone's feelings about their sexuality and gender are going to be different. And of course, with time and age, you're eventually going to realize that there are some things that just don't work with you, or maybe there's something that you dismissed before that actually turned out to be relatively nice. And that's kind of how sexuality and gender works, like I said. And one of the main reasons why I stopped identifying as trans is because I've come to realize that it was more of a byproduct of not only having a lack of sense of identity from having borderline personality disorder, but also because of internalized misogyny, I guess, with the factors that I mentioned, the aforementioned mental illness alongside with a mother who was severely homophobic and transphobic as well, it just, kind of led to that. I don't know how to really explain it without it sounding weird, aside from I'm actively going to therapy, plus doing some psychedelics has kind of led to some very powerful insights about myself, and specifically how I view not only myself, but women as a whole. Nowadays, I am a non-binary person who is very much in touch with their feminine side. I love wearing dresses, especially if they are of the sweet Lolita variety. I love the color pink. I absolutely love getting Starbucks and playing Animal Crossing and Pokemon and doing e-girl shit. Basically, I'm very comfortable with my feminine side, but in terms of how I identify with my gender, it's just there. Like, it's there. Like, I perceive myself as a gender, but it's not a specific gender. Ever since I have embraced the feminine sides of myself, it has caused some doubt for me in terms of my gender identity, largely because I just have that nagging fear about not being considered non-binary enough. But to me, ultimately, that argument is null and void because there's really no right way to present as a non-binary person, because that's kind of the point of being non-binary. your gender identity doesn't really exist, or at least exist outside of your traditional male and female. And you know what? If me wearing dresses and continuously liking the color pink and getting pink tech and shit for my e-girl setup continues to piss people off and make people invalidate my non-binary status, whatever. Fuck them. They're sour assholes anyways. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and being able to allow me to get some stuff out, I guess. Check my channel out for more content, and until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.